Hello everyone, I'm Shinjini. Welcome to the Tech Talk series by Quadrant Knowledge Solutions, where we discuss the latest technology trends with industry experts and leaders in the ICT domain. So today we are in conversation with Somil Gupta, who is the AI monetization expert, CEO and co-founder of Algorithmic Scale and has been deemed the AI influencer of the year. Along with him, we have our own in-house expert from Quadrant Knowledge Solutions, Apporva Dawalbhakta, who is the Associate Research Director and in Data Analytics and AI domain. So the topic for today's conversation is data-driven experimentation and creative decision making, right? So Somil, we'll start the questions with you. Even a few years ago, there was a huge buzz around the word AI as a service, right? A few examples of it are direct monetizations like Einstein, which was Salesforce AI service, while IBM had their own call Watson. So, alternatively, indirect monetizations like the ones used in Netflix and Amazon ensures that there is a helping hand for people, but at the other time, they are also luring customers towards subscription. So, what exactly do we mean by AI subscription and AI monetization, and what is its significance in today's global scenario? And is there anything more to it than commonly people are aware of?
Yes. So I think there is a lot more to it than just offering a AI model as a service or just having a set of recommendations. In fact, I think when you talk about monetization, it's actually about realizing the value. So value realization from the predictions, from the insights that we generate from the AI. And this impacts the basic business economics. So if you see 20 years ago, if you look at the classical marketing, then we used to have the surveys, and in the surveys we used to ask 35, 40 questions to public, and then we used to use these 35, 40 data points to create some mass segments. And the companies used to position their products and services into these large mass segments, right? So if you see most of the business systems that we have today, whether it's ERP, whether it's your marketing systems, your CRM systems, your supply chain, all that systems, the entire business operating system is designed to serve these very large, a few number of very large segments. But what we have seen with big data, with e-commerce, and with AI is that now we have got thousands of data points. And because we have thousands of data points, we can get a lot of behavioral information about the users. That means we are able to discover thousands of micro segments that people belong to. So you and I could be part of many different segments depending upon where we are, depending upon the time of the day, where we are in our life. And the opportunity now is that now, because we have those millions of segments, companies can use data and AI to identify these segments. They can use data and AI to classify people into these segments. We can estimate their purchasing power. We can personalize the offering, the configuration of products and services for each and every segment, do very specific pricing for that. And we can also use automation to orchestrate our value chain, orchestrate our order to cash to actually serve. So the real value of AI monetization is coming from the ability or the business capability to discover and serve these emerging segments, because this is where the value is, right? And already you can see that there are so many niche players who have started coming up, and they serve a very specific group. Even if you look at diet base, so you have ketone diet, you have got your exercise regimes. So there are so many different segments that people want to take based on their lifestyle, based on their ethnicity, etc. So that is where I see the true value of monetization of AI. It's our ability to identify these upcoming segments, identify where the value pools are, and your ability to serve it using flexible solutions. So that value realization part, I think that's where AI has to head towards in monetization. AI as a service is good, but that's limited to very few technical companies who are building these
Hmm.
technology platforms. But when you look at the mass market, when we look at smaller companies, small and medium enterprises, entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, this is how they can leverage AI. This is how they can monetize AI by identifying their specific segments and serving them in the best possible way.
Amazing. So I'll leave the room for you and Apurva to further continue the discussion, and I'll join in the end.
Yeah.
Stage is all yours, Apurva.
Thanks, Shinjini. I think Somil, a couple of very interesting points from you. Value realization, definitely. And I think the ketone diet example, I think that aptly sets the stage for where we are diving into actually. So we talked about AI as a service. We mentioned that it's actually the mid market and the small market size. That's where the untapped potential is, and that's where things should be going, according to you. So, in accordance to this, I would like to say that the talks about democratizing AI, they have been doing the rounds for a real long time now. On one hand, the tech giants, they are literally galloping towards monumental and exponential technological innovations. But while on the other side, on-ground questions about the ethicality and the actual feasibility around data democratization and say related open source neutral AI services, that's also growing, right? And
Yeah.
understandably so, I feel. Um, I feel the answer lies somewhere in the between, as for the answer for any practical real life question. So, could you throw some light on this?
Yeah. See, when we talk about democratizing AI, I think the reason why this question, has been doing rounds, but we have not progressed on this is because most of the development around data and AI has been around building the technology. If you look at the adoption, if you look at the utilization of AI, if you look at the use cases that we are doing, you see that it's very, very minuscule. So it's a very few people in an organization who are using these tools, and they are not your average users. These are the power users, and they have been using it for very, very special, very, very specific use cases in an organization. Now, if you contrast that, and if you say, you know what, if we are trying to scale AI, right, the moment we start thinking about bigger use cases at ecosystem levels, let's say look at the complete supply chain, then what happens is you cannot restrict. If let's say if I have an AI based intelligence service, let's say if I have a location based service, let's say we have Google Maps, and I as a large company have built the Google Maps and I have all the data. The only way I can create value for my customers and only way I can deliver this value and realize the value is if I start inviting my ecosystem to be a part of the value creation and value delivery process. That means I have to make it accessible. So it's no fun if only I use the Google Map services. The only way I can actually do some good is if I can empower the person who is my entire ecosystem, the people, the smaller companies, the entrepreneurs in my ecosystem. If they start using services, if I open the data for them to make decisions, only then I can actually do the end-to-end optimization. So I think this is something that has to happen because there is no other way. If you want to commercialize any AI solution into the mass market, if you want to kind of build commercial products and services on it, you have to invite the ecosystem to use the data, and that means you have to open up. So while the tech giants are doing their stuff, I think they also understand that they need to open the ecosystem. They need to open source this so that lot many people can do it. And also comes back to the first question we said, because we have got micro segments, millions of micro segments, no large company on the planet can serve all of them. So you have to empower others
Absolutely.
to build very niche solutions to serve. So basically, the large companies will take up the large mass segments as usual, but then they can also basically take a share of the revenue or take the share of value from the smaller segments where they empower others, the smaller companies to serve. I think that's the direction that we are going. Where AI will become more like a platform play for the large companies, and it will become and like a marketplace play for a lot of smaller entities and entrepreneurs.
Wow. Yeah, I think that cleared quite a things, I think for the end users as well. Um, Moving forward, I think further talks about universal inclusivity, AI for all. I think they have been doing the rounds for some time as well, right?
Yeah.
And one can, I assume, imagine that the idea generation for such initiatives happens so that the power of technology, as you rightly mentioned, it benefits even the lowest common denominator of the society, right?
Yeah.
So, how has AI and related services actually fared in this regard? Like you mentioned about giants like Google wanting to do that, and they have achieved that to a certain extent. But in terms of the global population, or say for a country like India, how much of that penetration has actually happened, and how much is there still to go?
Yeah. So this is again a very interesting question because see, on one end, uh, there are services that are being used in the background. So any product that we use today, there is a component of AI or automation somewhere in that, and we are using it unknowingly. Whether if Grammarly doing your grammar check, whether your email where it's kind of predicting your basically filtering out your spam, whether it's your antivirus system, antivirus software trying to predict malware. So in the background, hidden in the hidden behind the products, I think AI is working from behind the scenes, and people are consuming not AI but the benefits of AI indirectly.
Right.
That part is there. However, when you look at AI as a service, that means enabling people, like enabling general public to use AI services where they can build solutions, not as a consumer but as prosumers. That I think is still we have a long way to go. The reason being, and I think there are two reasons for it. The first part is the complexity that we have built into data and AI has been immense. I mean, we are we have built very complex models that are not explainable. That's black box, that mathematically very, very complex. It's very different, very difficult for an average person to understand what they do and how they work and what happens if they don't work. And we have seen some cases like how the drivers were getting affected in the Uber ecosystem because of the algorithms were very opaque. So the complexity is one part of it. We have not been able to simplify the design and development of these algorithms. That's one part. But the second part is also we have not trained people to use AI, because AI is not really about knowing the answer. It's about asking better questions. And if you look at our education system, if you look at the rule-based paradigms that the companies are working with, we have been working in this heuristic if-then rule-based paradigm. We have so much hooked on to the answer that we have almost forgotten how to ask questions. And AI is all about forming a hypothesis. It's all about asking better questions. So I think we need to focus on both of these areas. The inclusion part will come when we start simplifying the solutions. And then there is basically the smart people, the concern, or the thing with smart people is that they assume everybody else is as smart as them. So they start building very complex solutions. So we have to make them understand that, and we've got some of the smartest people in the data and AI world. So they have to understand that the rest of the world is not as smart as them. So you need to simplify and start coming down, building a solution to a level where everybody can use it. It's intuitive. And on the other hand, I think we also need to empower people and train them is this new way of thinking, because AI is there to share your cognitive load, right? But you need to formulate your questions in the right way. You have to formulate your hypothesis in the way that AI can come and help. I think these two, both these things have to happen simultaneously for us to move ahead in this, really digital, the global inclusion or universal inclusion of AI. I think that's where the key is, in my opinion.
Wow, that was a wonderful thought personally for me. I think you need to ask the right set of questions for the AI to give you the right set of answers. I think
Yeah.
absolutely. And people, maybe it's the hype, maybe it's the novelty value of it, but people are getting carried away too much by the answers itself that they're forgetting
Yeah.
the questions, I think.
Yes. Absolutely.
Great. So, in today's day and age, uh, I think explosion of data is an understatement to say the least. Every second, every millisecond that's happening, the rate of data generation through organizations, through civilian lines, through lives, through everything is humongous, right? This data is obviously it's scattered, yet it's highly contextualized, and it's extremely divided into disparate data sets.
Mm.
Um, Now, the real challenge is that to make sense of such humongous volumes of data points, I think the science of data analytics uh, has to be used to a lot of extent for further processing, right? So, in this regard, how could AI actually be used in order to lead for a creative decision making? And let me pull you back a little bit and ask you a basic question, like what do you actually mean by creative decision making in the context of AI? Because there's a lot of hullabaloo around that entire context or topic, but no one really seems to provide a good explanation for that.
Okay, I will try my best. But let me kind of come back to the conversation that we've had so far. So what we know is that there are millions of microsegments. So there is million of value pools opportunities that are available. We know that the organizations operate on this Pareto 80-20 rule. That means most of their systems that we have built are designed for the 20% cases that happen 80% of the times. So there's 80% of the cases which are currently not being served, which are not in the awareness, which organizations don't even know that there is an opportunity, or if their opportunity comes, they are not able to serve it, right? So within the commercial framework, the reason why we are not able to talk about decision making is one thing that I feel is lacking in most organizations is the business and commercial framework to define what a good decision should be. For example, see, AI can help you choose the most optimum investment, but it cannot decide how much you want to invest, how long do you want to remain invested, what's the risk appetite that you have, what kind of payback you're looking for, right? So this is a question that a human or the person who the decision maker has to furnish. But within that frame, once we have set that frame, right, then AI can give you the most optimum solution by giving different combinations. So the creative decision making part, in my opinion, is basically to first of all understand what is currently not being served. Who are those customer segments who are in our vicinity, who are in the adjacencies of our capability, right? So we have to kind of take a step back from a systems oriented on IT oriented business thinking to a more capability oriented business thinking. What business capabilities do I have? And with that business capabilities and with that business asset, how can I reorganize that in a different way to serve another segment? And this is a very classic example of the 3M where they have this post-it notes. It was a weak glue, but they said, okay, we have this capability. It is a weak glue. How can we use that to make it commercially successful or make it commercially viable, right? So the capability is there, the assets are there. How do we orchestrate it? And that's where the question comes to the AI. You have to start thinking, okay, what are the additional use cases? What are the additional segments that I can serve? What assets and capabilities do I have? And how can I use AI to orchestrate them in the most possible way so that within the commercial framework of my company, within the risk value cost framework of my company, I can basically create a profitable business. And that's the creativity part, I think, that we're lacking, and that requires questions, that requires more experimental mindset, that requires people to not just have experience but also have this curiosity and start posing the questions, start posing these their kind of hypothesis in a testable form. I think that is the creative part which you're missing. It's the creativity has to start. Okay, what are we observing? What are we missing out, and how can we serve it?
Wow.
That's what I would say.
So basically, AI will not take the load of asking questions, looking for problems away from humans. I think that is one basic learning that humans could really keep that
Yes,
in mind, I think.
yes, of course. Because see, AI can help you within the framework. The moment you change the rules of the game, that you have to retrain the model again. So it's a framework that is very important, and we decide the framework. AI can only optimize play within that framework. They'll give you the best play in that framework, but we have to define what that framework is.
Absolutely, absolutely. As you as you mentioned, and as is pretty obvious for all, even the layman, AI is actually venturing into practically infinite use cases in today's day
Yeah.
and age. So I have a set of questions, a small set of questions in this regard, right? So one question that I'm sure you must be bombarded many number of times. Like, do we really need to worry about the ill effects of investing too much into AI monetization? And I say this in the context of human development, or the setback it might cause thereof.
Okay. So I would say there's a difference between investing in AI technology versus investing in AI monetization. I think that the issue that we have today is that we are investing too much in the AI technology and not enough in AI monetization. Because see, what happens is today we're talking about explainability, we're talking about ethics, we're talking about risk, we're talking about all this stuff. This is very difficult to kind of manage or address these questions in the technology frame of mind. But if you look at the
Right.
monetization and the commercialization frame, it is based on relationships. It is based on your business model. It's based on the people and agents who are part of your ecosystem. Today, I would say, okay, this is not, numbers are not based on like any repo, any data or any kind of research, but I say around 90 to 95% of the investment are going into the technology development and very little on the commercialization and monetization aspect. But if we
Right.
could do that, if we could focus, because see, in monetization, we focus on the value realization. That means we have to think end to end. In the end, the only way I can make money if I help somebody do achieve something else, some of their goals, right? So I have to start looking at the usability. I have to start looking at how they're going to use it. I have to start looking at the risk. I have to start looking at the impact. I have to start looking at the ethics. I have to start looking at how can other people apart from me can use this solution, right? That then I don't have a choice but to build explainability in the design. I don't have a choice but to build risk management in the design. So what we are missing really is the commercial framework. What we are really missing is investment in that monetization, right? So I don't think we can invest enough in monetization, because monetization is where we are actually looking at the impact of AI at a very, very fundamental level. And I would really hope that we can take some of these investment from technology development, because in the technology development we are already hit that scale where there are not much marginal improvements in the accuracy or in the in the learning potential of the systems, uh, compared to the investment that we made. And if you could take that some of that investment and start putting that into the realization, into monetization, into ethics, into explainability, I think that's going to give us a much better returns on investment. That's also going to help us adopt the solutions much better. That's going to improve the utilization of these solutions, and of course make it accessible and available to a lot more people. So that's what I think. I think we need to invest more on monetization and less on the technology development.
Wow. It cleared many doubts in my mind as well. Investment in AI, monetization. Great. Thank you so much for that. I think moving ahead, there are certain values that humans could be bringing to the table in the context
Yeah.
of AI, right? It could be critical thinking, it could be corporate culture strengthening, and maybe some other things, right? So my question is, like, as humans, keeping in these values in mind, should we work specifically towards securing ourselves or making ourselves so-called AI proof or robot proof so that the livelihoods and survivals are intact?
See, I think again, two parts to this question. The first part is that what we have today in the name of AI is narrow AI. And if you look at the jobs, that even the simplest of jobs that most people do, they consist of hundreds of tasks. What we have been able to do is automate some of these tasks, not the jobs, right? Jobs are a much larger entity. And the reason why it is difficult to automate jobs, so it's not like you're going to go into office and they say, you know what, okay, thank you for coming, but we have hired Siri in your place. That's not going to happen, because the way we have defined jobs, it's unstructured. It's very, very
Right.
loosely defined. It is the jobs definition has been built for human level cognition, not for machine cognition, right? So I don't think the jobs are going anywhere. And the second part is, I always believe that if you look at most of the jobs over the last 50 years, the moment some part of the task get automated, you always go to the next value. And if you look at the executive assistants, for example, for 30, 40 years ago, they used to be note takers. They used to take notes from the executives and do the dictation, right? Now
Right.
they manage the calendar and productivity of the executives. So look at how
Absolutely.
this role has changed. And they have got so many automation, so many productivity tools, but they are still there. I think they are more relevant because they understand the productivity. They understand what is the best utilization of the time for that person. So I believe people, humans in general, have this desire to go to the next level of value creation, because that's how we find meaning. We find meaning when we do something meaningful, when we feel joy in doing something, right? So if you take away
Right.
some of the menial tasks or some of the repetitive tasks, then probably they can move to much higher value, much more joy bringing tasks. However, the question that you asked, should we be scared? I think we should be scared, yes, but not of AI and robots, but of the other people who have the experience, knowledge, and they know how to work with data and AI tools. Because they have the experience, they have the knowledge, but they also bring the way to test their hypothesis. They have the data which will they can back themselves with data. They can test their validation hypothesis. So if you have opinion, if you have a hypothesis, right? And let's say if you need and you work on it, and after 6 months you realize that it's not working out, and compare that with somebody who has the same hypothesis but also has tools to test it within a month, the latter would be more successful. So I think if people have to be scared of, they have to be scared of the people who are bringing this new mindset and this new ways of working. So yes, there's a reason to be afraid, but not of for AI, but for other people who are investing right now in learning. And that's where I want to recommend everybody to start looking at your jobs and start looking at how you can incorporate data and AI. How can you incorporate experimental mindset? How can you incorporate more questions in your job descriptions? It doesn't matter what you do. You can always find some part. And if you can automate your own task, and if you can make yourself obsolete, it's good because then you can focus on something bigger. And I would be happy if I could have an AI solution that can do what I do and do this monetization advisory and help companies monetize. Then I can focus on something else. I can look at how do we incentivize those models? How do I do risk management on those models? How do I get better deals? So that's how we start thinking about it. AI is our friend, but most of the tools, but we need to know how to use it. So I think a lot of fear is because we have not been able to use the tools, we have not been able to access the tools, and we have not been able to use it into our advantage. But people who do that, they really start moving up the productivity ladder.
Wow, that was a great explanation, and I think definitely an eye opener for many things that I had in mind. Um, so now I'm going to put you in a slight spot. I have gone through many of your blogs and your posts that keep cropping up on my LinkedIn feed and otherwise as well. So there's one statement of yours, and it really intrigued me, and I almost understood it minus one part, right? So I'll first state the statement. You say that a very simple approach to getting started with monetization is to start defining the return on investment using a simple formula, which is equal to into bracket accumulated benefits minus cost of uncertainty bracket closed whole divided by total cost of resources,
Yeah.
right? So my question here is, how do organizations actually define their cost of uncertainty? Because personally, I feel that since in many situations it becomes very probabilistic and broad and vague to predict that.
Yeah. So first, what I want to clarify is that it's not my statement. It's basically from
Okay.
PwC. So
Okay.
the article which I had shared in the post.
Right.
So
Right.
it's them. So I can't take the credit for the formula. It's them who has come up with the formula, and
Right.
it's a good formula. I like it. But I would like to try to answer the question of cost of uncertainty with an example. One of the use cases that most companies they look for is predictive maintenance, and the hypothesis behind this predictive maintenance is that if we could know that when the equipment is going to fail, we can do something about it. That means we can send a technician, we could send the spare parts, and then we could maybe do a service before it fails, so that there is no disruption. And let's say we have an AI-based model who does this prediction, and then there's an accuracy which is 95, let's say 95%. Now, what it means is that if I'm kind of taking 90, if I'm taking 100 data points, or if you're taking 100 inputs for prediction, around 95 are going to be accurate. That means if I say it's going to fail, it will fail. If I say it's not going to fail, it will not fail. But then there is still this 5%, which you call false positive and false negatives, where I might predict that it will fail, but it doesn't. And in this case, I might end up, because I don't know any better, I will only know it after a week. I might do the express shipping of my spare parts. I might schedule the technician, and that person might go there all the way. I might also ask the customer to take a downtime, and nothing happens. And then there's a cost associated with that, right? There's a cost of transport, there's a cost of travel, there's a cost of downtime. On the other hand, if my model predicts that something that the equipment will not fail, and it does fail, And that puts me in spot as well, because then there'll be an unplanned downtime. And if a customer is buying this service from me, they might have some penalty clauses, and then I have to pay the penalty. So there's a cost of that. And plus I have to kind of do some firefighting, and I have to expedite that express. So I have to do this cost plus the penalty as well. Now the question that really organization have to ask is, what is the most optimum view, or what's the most optimum strategy for me given the 95% accuracy, right? If the situation comes, do I only kind of whatever happens, do I take the risk and just schedule the shipping and not to take any chances, or do I not do anything and then take the risk of going through this or paying the penalty? That is the part which the organization have to figure out. And to do that, you need to have the commercial framework. You have to understand what is the basis for decision making, because the cost of penalty is, AI cannot tell you what it is. It has to come through the contract that you have negotiated. The cost of shipping has to come from your freight providers, right? So you have to, in the real time, you have to figure out that, understand that there is uncertainty in every prediction that AI is going to make, but you need a way to, number one, estimate the expected value of that uncertainty. What what will it cost you? And you also need a way to reduce that cost or to reduce that uncertainty. So that is how what we define as the cost of. So the benefit, the accumulated benefit is basically what more can I what more value can I add to the customer, or what additional service I can offer to the customer by making the prediction, the 95%. What am I getting from predicting the 95% times, right? Am I making any additional revenue? Minus what is it that I'm losing when the prediction goes wrong? That's the cost of uncertainty. And then divided that by whatever resources I need to build this entire solution, operate this entire solution. So that's how the equation really works. And without a commercial framework, it's very difficult to understand the benefits and the cost. But the moment you put a commercial framework of the service into picture, and you say, okay, what is my risk appetite? What's my investment potential? What's how much loss I'm willing to sustain? Then all these costs and benefit figures become very, very clear.
Wonderful. I think a real life example clarified that for me. And thank you so much for the detailed explanation. So we are officially at the last question. I'll circle back to the topic and just ask you, like, based on your perception, based on your plethora of research and understanding that the resources that you have spent in this topic over the years, like how much creative and intuitive could data-driven decisions, say taken by AI services, be in the coming future, especially considering a gamut of technological developments which are happening in the space? And basically, in short, where is this space heading towards, based on your expert opinion?
Yeah. Okay. This is okay. First of all, I would like to be very, very careful how I answer this question, because creativity and intuition are human values, right?
Right.
I see AI more as a cognitive kind of a cognitive friend or a cognitive companion that can take care of some of these cognitive tasks. But creativity and intuition does not stem only from cognition. There are a lot of other human values. There's a lot of empathy. There's a lot of other things that belong to us humans as our nature that go into creativity and intuition. And that part, I see that it will continue to be the domain of humans, because the creativity and intuition comes from empathy and comes from our need for meaning in life. AI solutions, however, can work in a set framework. So when I talk about creativity and intuition from an AI perspective, then it comes down to within a given frame, within a given problem frame or a solution frame, what are the new combinations that they are able to find out that were not known to us, relying on only on our cognition. So if you look at an example of the AlphaGo, who beat the world grandmaster in the game of Go, the value of or the AI can only work to the extent we define the Go the game of Go in that context. The moment you change
Right.
the rules of the game, you have to retrain the model again. That the same model cannot be used anymore, right? Because it has only learned in that constraint. But what it can do is it can help us find those moves or those combinations of moves that were not known to humans. So humans can learn a lot from looking at how an AI agent is playing the game.
Right.
And we can transfer, because we have creativity and intuition, we can transfer, even if we change the game of Go into a three-dimensional format, we can still transfer that learning into the new set or into the new framework. So the way I see AI space expanding is within, if the frame is fixed, then of course AI will have an upper hand. But the moment the frame keeps changing, humans will have an upper hand. And that is where I think that there is a collaboration potential here. There's a way for us to work together where, and the frame is will change because situations in our lives change, right? The network changes, you have supply chain disruptions, you have so many different things, you have climate change. Once we define the frame, AI can help us find a better solution. But then very soon we'll find out that this solution is no longer applicable because the environment has changed and we have to set up a new frame and a new solution and a new AI to help us optimize that. So it's going to be a constant, I think, a constant collaboration step by step as
Right.
we go from one end to other end. And I think the importance of this is so far, if you see the most of the problems that we have, the wicked problems, whether it's sustainability, climate change, poverty, hunger, uh, all this urbanization, these wicked problems, so far we have tacitly acknowledged these problems as a trade-off problem. What I mean is that we have acknowledged that if I want to have scientific technological progress, pollution will be an outcome. So I either choose this or that. And we have been thinking in our mind as having a switch, which either goes to technological progress or it goes to sustainability. The, the benefit of having an AI based solutions or having AI agents is that it's no longer a trade off now. I could have technological progress and sustainability and inclusion. And so we have to move away from this or based thinking to an and based thinking and start looking deploying AI solutions. So the moment you say, okay, I have been able to I've got technical progress and sustainability. What is the next step? Next step is I want to have progress, sustainability, and inclusion, right? And that's a new frame. And then you have a new set of AI solutions that will solve that problem. And then another thing, how do we reduce wastage? And there's another and to it. So we have to keep expanding the problem space, try to solve more and more wicked problems, and AI in that sense will be our companion in coming to the optimized solution in that frame. That's how I see it. And again, we are the humans, we define that frame. We have intuition, we have creativity, we have empathy, we want to help people, we want to save the planet. AI doesn't want any of that. It's us who we want to. So it's up to us how we set the problem frame, how we deploy the AI solutions, how we manage it, and how we commercialize it, monetize it, of course. I mean, but it's up to us to do that.
Wow. It was genuinely music for my ears, especially the last couple of sentences where you were submerging AI, climate change, ecology, and yet saving the planet, all those keywords in one words. I had that question in my mind, it got slipped, but I'm so glad that you mentioned all these things because being a naturalist and an environmentalist, it felt great that AI will also offer hope in that context. And
I do
I
hope
think,
so. I do hope so.
yeah,
Really, I do.
yeah, fingers crossed, yeah. Somil, thank you so much. It was such an enriching talk. Thank you so much for your time. And
Thanks, Apurva.
one of the best AI talks that I've had in maybe a decade or so. So I know
Thank you so much for that.
it has extended beyond our time, but it was literally worth it. It has made my week or month for sure. Thank
I
you so
have loved
much.
the questions, and I really thank you so much because a lot of times I mean I only believe that the message comes from you. So sometimes I also learn a lot by asking. When you ask these questions, it put my mind to thinking, and I was very happy that you asked these questions, and I was made me think, and I'm very happy for that. Thank you so much, and
Thank you
thanks
so much,
Shinjini for
Somil.
organizing this.
Thank you, Somil. Thank you so much for joining us today for such an educational and interesting, eye-opening conversation. I'm like, same as much like Apurva, it was a very educational conversation for a lot of people, including me. Thank you for joining us in the Tech Talk series, and we hope that we can reconnect with you in the future for other such great topics.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.